What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me as always. Welcome back to day 5 of the Camp Crystal Lake tour. And today we're going to be looking at Friday the 13th part. That was creepy. Anyway, today is Friday the 13th part.
You talking to me?
No, Roy, I'm talking to them. We'll get to you. Today we're going to be looking at Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. The 5th entry in a 6-year span, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, or Scooby-Doo and the Copycat Killer.
And it would have been mine if it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
Takes place 5 years after the events of Part 4, the final chapter, where we follow a now 17-year-old Tommy Jarvis who's trying to overcome the trauma of his past encounter with Jason Voorhees. This movie gives us a pretty cool opening scene with our one and only cameo of Corey Feldman's Tommy Jarvis, where we have two guys messing with Jason's grave, and Jason is resurrected, killing them both and coming at Tommy. This scene definitely set up what looked to be a promising entry in the series. And this is also our one and only appearance of Jason Voorhees, as this is the movie between human and zombie Jason. Besides that opening scene, Jason is not in this movie. After waking up from the dream, we get the new 17-year-old Tommy Jarvis being transferred to Pinehurst Rehabilitation Center. And this just has to be said right from the beginning. This is by far my least favorite version of Tommy Jarvis in the franchise. I understand why they went this direction, as technically he was supposed to take the reins and become the next Jason. I'm not saying I don't understand why they did what they did. I'm just saying I don't necessarily enjoy watching it on screen. You know, parts 4 and part 6 are widely considered to be two of the fan favorites in the entire franchise. And a large part of that is due to Corey Feldman and Tom Matthews' portrayal of Tommy Jarvis. And in my opinion, Part 5 just does everything they can to make the character completely unlikable. After meeting this movie's version of Tommy Jarvis, we're introduced to a few more of the inconsequential characters in this movie, although we do get Final Girl Pam here, and we get Reckless Reggie with that iconic scream. Reggie?
Reggie?
No, not that Reggie. There we go.
That was pretty.
And this is, of course, the Friday movie that revolves around a bar of chocolate. I wish I was kidding. When we get to Pinehurst, we get to meet Joey, who seems like a nice enough guy. He's not very considerate at laundry, but other than that, he seems like a stand-up fellow. Joey must not have known that Vic was on a diet, because when he offers him this bar of chocolate, Vic does what any normal human does when you offer them candy, and he murders him in broad daylight with an axe. You know, like you do.
Well, if that's the way you feel, forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
And the first paramedics on site? You got it. Good old Roy Burns. This movie kind of tries to give it away, even though a lot of people didn't get it at the time, as we get this weird sequence where the camera just kind of sits on Roy for an uncomfortable amount of time. This movie's way of saying, hey everyone, this guy's not suspicious at all. But following this scene, we get the first copycat killer deaths of the movie, as the first two were technically done by Jason in a dream sequence, and the third one was by our good buddy Vic with his axe. And the first two deaths here, you get one pretty creative one. These are of course the two guys on their way to the John Travolta lookalike contest who have car problems. Now while the one guy just gets your run-of-the-mill throat slit, the other guy gets the road flare put in his mouth.
What are you doing, douchebag?
And even though you were more thorough, 2018 Michael Myers, Roy Burns did it first. This film does have 20 plus kills in it. I don't remember the exact number, but it's over 20. But that's not necessarily a positive thing, because to my recollection, only 3 of these kills are really worth mentioning. When you contrast this to part 4, that like I said in that review, 11 of the 14 kills to me are memorable. You play a percentage game, I'll take the quality of part 4 over the quantity of part 5 all day. So at this point, the movie really starts ramping up the kill count and the full frontal nudity. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a classic slasher fan. I know these movies largely revolve around 3 things: people dying, sex, drugs, and alcohol. So I don't have any issues with nudity in a slasher film. But with part 5, it definitely feels over the top, as we have long scenes with people just like sitting around naked for no reason. Whereas like previous entries, it made sense, like maybe they're stepping into the shower, they're going like skinny dipping, something like that. This movie just really lets the characters sit there, and you know, there's a such thing as moderation. Too much of a good thing. And producer Danny Steinman obviously didn't get that memo. And after doing further research, I learned that Danny Steinman actually got his start producing pornography. Yeah, that makes this movie feel kind of sleazy, where at times it feels like you're not even watching a slasher, it feels like you're watching a porn movie. But our next set of victims are the couple that go out in the woods. But we do get one of the better kills when her boyfriend leaves to go to the creek, and the killer comes on top of her with like the garden shears to her eyes. We don't get to see this kill, but we do get to see the result, and it's pretty gruesome. And then we get 2 of the better kills in this movie back to back, as once her boyfriend returns and finds her body, we get that sequence of the belt going around the tree, and we just have the killer like twisting the stick through the belt loops. Damn, he's strong. And while these were some pretty decent kills, they could have benefited with a little more brutality, but unfortunately the MPAA had their hands all over this entry. This, along with Part 7, The New Blood, suffered the most of the entire franchise, as a lot of their kills were either off camera or like quick cutaways. But a few scenes later, we do get one of the more memorable characters with Demon, and you know I have to talk about it. Those damn enchiladas.
Damn enchiladas!
And this movie gives us something pretty unique, and what might be the most romantic bathroom scene in cinema history, as we get the nice little poop duet here from Demon and his girlfriend.
Hey, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh.
And I get to live out my worst nightmare of having to talk to anybody on the toilet. After the killer spares me and kills both of them, we get the third pretty cool kill in this movie, where we have the redneck who just got his ass beat by Tommy Jarvis. He's like in his backyard with his dirt bike doing circles. And then we have the killer like stick his arm out with the knife and takes the guy's head right off. It's a pretty cool kill. But after this sequence, we get Pam the final girl doing final girl things, finding all the bodies around the camp, with some assistance by the killer himself. How considerate. And we get, of course, that famous Reggie scream. There it is. And with that, we're on to our final act. And where does it take place? You guessed it, a goddamn barn. I don't know what it is with these movies' infatuations with barns. We had part 3 that pretty much based the entire movie around it. And we're right back to that fucking barn. But here we get one of these scenes that drive me crazy in this movie. This is where we get the killer coming after Pam, and Reggie breaks out of the barn with the tractor. This scene is ridiculous. This thing is going about 2 miles an hour, maybe. All the killer had to do was move out of the way. But instead he's standing there the whole time like... I don't know why, that scene bothers me so much. And then like when Reggie finally hits him about 30 minutes later, like the killer goes flying back 10 feet. This thing was going 2 miles an hour. Like at the worst, it probably would have run over your foot. After that though, we actually get in the barn. Pam and Reggie hold their own pretty well here. You know who doesn't? Tommy Jarvis. The dude gets his ass kicked like right away by the killer. You know, where you have like Pam coming at him with the chainsaw, you get Reggie from the top ropes. Tommy gets his ass kicked immediately. Although in his defense, he is the one that's able to cut off the killer's arm when he's trying to grab Pam and Reggie. And this is where we get a few conveniences, as the killer just like falls on these spikes that are under the barn like it's 1995's Mortal Kombat. As he's falling, you see his mask perfectly fly off to reveal, plot twist, it was the paramedic Roy Burns the entire time. I know. Nobody saw this coming. And then after Roy's reveal and death, we get this scene that I hate so much, where we get like this double fake out with Tommy maybe stabbing Pam, maybe not, twice. Now in my opinion, this was utilized much better in Halloween 4 with Jamie Lloyd in the clown costume, even though they wasted that shit. But we'll get to Halloween. I hated this ending. Even though I know what they're trying to do with the character of Tommy Jarvis, it just didn't work for me. Now there are a few things I think this movie did well. If you're not going to have Jason as your killer, I appreciate that they went back to their roots and did a nice little whodunit. And in my opinion, this is actually handled better than the original movie. Whereas 1980, we're not introduced to our killer until the final act, this movie lets us meet all of our suspects in the first couple scenes, where you kind of get to guess who it was, and you get a little validation if you guess right. The second positive is this still has the tone of a Friday the 13th movie, whereas in the future we get some pretty fucking weird versions of Friday the 13th, whether it's Jason on vacation, Jason in hell, which might be a vacation for him, or Jason in space. This movie still holds the tone of Friday the 13th. Positive number 3, this is a positive and a negative, the kills here. We do get a very high body count, but like I said, there's not many quality kills in here. By my count, 3 worth mentioning, because the MPAA had their hands all over this entry. So this is kind of a good and a bad. And then my fourth and final positive are just a few characters that I really liked. How could you not love Reggie, you know? I kind of wish he would have got more screen time, to be honest with you. Pam was an okay final girl to me. She's nothing really special as compared to some of the others in the franchise, but she was okay. Reggie's brother Demon was pretty fun. And of course, if Part 4 introduced us to Jason's rival in Tommy Jarvis, Part 5 definitely introduced us to Crispin Glover's rival in Violet. Yeah, she's got some pretty sick moves. Although I have to give the nod to Crispin Glover, because while he got the awesome corkscrew kill, poor Violet just gets a lame stab in the stomach. Advantage, Jimmy. Now, when it comes to the negatives for this movie, number 1 is by far Tommy Jarvis. I do not like this version of him at all. I think if these movies would have gone from Part 4 to Part 6 Tommy, it would have just strengthened his character that much and added to his legacy. Whereas this one really kind of drags it down a little bit for me. Again, I fully understand why they went this direction, as he was supposed to pick up the mantle of Jason. I'm not saying I don't understand it. I'm just saying that I personally didn't enjoy watching it. And number 2, this is on my positive and my negatives, the kills in this movie. Now, while I mentioned in my positives there are a few fun kills here, still, when you're comparing what I would say are 3 memorable kills out of 20 plus in the movie, it's not a very good percentage. I feel like they just threw in a lot of bodies here for the sake of a high body count, knowing that Jason wasn't in this movie. I feel like they really had to ramp up the bodies and the nudity, and wow, they did both of those. And number 3 is definitely just how trashy the movie felt. Like I said earlier, with Danny Steinman producing, who got his start by doing porn movies, this movie just feels really sleazy, you know, like, there's a lot of times where it doesn't even feel like a slasher movie, it just kind of feels like you're watching a porno. My fourth negative is just really how far this franchise backslid when it comes to the characters. Like, after nailing almost every character in Part 4 and making for an enjoyable cast overall, we really take a big step backwards in this movie, as in my opinion, you don't have a memorable final girl here. You know, Reggie's great, but I mean, he's not Tommy Jarvis as a kid actor. There's just really nobody that stands out on screen to me in this entire movie. My next gripe is that while the chocolate scene is very unintentionally hilarious, it just kind of feels like a lazy way to introduce Roy Burns and make his whole story arc make sense. Like, it just feels like they could have come up with something better than his son being killed because he offered somebody chocolate?
Chocolate? Chocolate! Chocolate!
Now overall, Friday the 13th Part 5 is not a movie I find myself enjoying when I look back on this series. It's certainly my least favorite of the 5 that we've reviewed so far. In my opinion, there's just not a whole lot to like here. This is probably the first time in the franchise that I honestly wouldn't recommend that you watch this movie. And maybe some of you have some different thoughts. Whether you love this movie, whether you hate it, whether it's somewhere in the middle, leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. But if you like what I'm doing here, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe right over here so you don't miss any of my future content. And if you're liking my Friday the 13th review series, be sure to check out a few more right over here. And until next time, we'll see you guys for Friday the 13th Part 6. Jason Lives.